Alright everyone, the tide is turning, I believe, in public opinion against the far-left rioting, shooting hordes that are still operating in some U.S. cities. You had, like a few days ago, and you still have gaslighting by the legacy media on this. They're trying to insinuate that hit and run there that occurred on the closed interstate where you had a group of BLM protesters, okay? They weren't throwing rocks yet at that time, but then they, of course, attacked this vehicle. The group got together and a couple people got hit and one of them died, actually, because it was the middle of the night and they're wearing all black on the interstate and they wonder why somebody got hit. It's kind of self-explanatory. We find out that the person that was involved that hit them was black. So, you know, there's no racial motivation, but not a single legacy media report on that mentions the race of the person who did the hitting. And you can look and you can see the effect of this propaganda. If you go to any of the Twitter threads about it, you have people talking about how white supremacists love to drive people over. None of the media reports actually mentioned the fact that he was black. Obviously not a white supremacist. Kamala Harris did this, lamenting this and and not mentioning the race. And there's a reason for that, because the hope is that it'll get people riled up about racism that doesn't exist. Now, you've got an 8-year-old little black girl that got shot, actually. Apparently her family was driving down the street. They got too close to one of these peaceful protests, very peaceful, and a person in the crowd randomly opened fire on their vehicle, killing their daughter. Now, the immediate reaction among the far-left conspiracy kooks is, well, it was a white supremacist in the crowd trying to start trouble. No, it's more likely it was an Antifa member. That's more likely. Maybe for some odd reason they thought that the vehicle was going to attack the crowd or something, because these people have been, again, whipped up into a propagandist frenzy by our dishonest legacy corporate swill pig media and our legacy corporate swill pig politicians that constantly race bait because it makes them money and it gets them votes number 2. Now the Atlanta mayor's had enough. So apparently they're going to start cracking down on these rioting, looting, thuggish hordes. That's good. This is what we need to happen. Federal government should not be involved in responding to this sort of thing unless it's necessary. Like, federal troops have been guarding a few statues here and there and are operating in D.C. because it's the fucking capital. Other than that, it's the responsibility of mayors and governors to deal with these problems. The fact that they're not doing, in some cases, anything about it, and in some cases, even making excuses for these groups, even after there have been shootings, stabbings, bombings, and all sorts of other weird shit going on, the fact that the Seattle mayor, for example, continued to adulate Chaz until about the time protesters, which actually in that sense were peaceful, showed up at her house to call for her to resign. Then all of a sudden, the shootings that occurred the night before, as an excuse they were used, all of a sudden that was significant, but people had been shot and one person killed already, and supposedly it was still peaceful. Wasn't until it inconvenienced the politician. Now, what have I said for years about moral panics and things of this nature? Because this is a sort of a spin-off of our mini moral panic right now. What happens is that the panic gets big enough that this starts basically with the misleading tale of internet Nazis and the need to censor extremists and stuff like that. Basically, the corporate media and corporate politicians realized it was a good election strategy years ago to ramble on and on like total goofball morons about how there were armies of white supremacists in the country, and this required a response. And corporations got to make nice family-friendly rainbow flag, thin black line sort of ad campaigns and make more money. And people got to have their opponents censored on online platforms. And big tech firms got to smash through alt tech, unsuccessfully at this point, but they managed to take Patreon down. They've managed to force certain figures and sites underground, which is making that underground bigger and more powerful for the next tech paradigm, but that's a different story. But what happens is that every single time one of these things happens, the initial organic response that is caused by a handful of corporations and politicians, see what you'd have is, you have a kernel problem. For instance, there are extremists online, mainly ISIS sympathizers and things like that, but that's not the group the Democrats want you to think about when you think about terrorism. There's a different face that they want to put on it. It is white and male. That's the truth. You'd get that kernel problem, a handful of people who are genuinely fomenting terrorism or doing like illegal shit. You extrapolate that, you give the public examples of that and say, look at this prevalent problem. Here's 5 examples, which are probably the only 5 examples you can fucking find, of people being extreme. We need to tackle this. The corporations make money through this, and the politicians get power through this. It provokes an organic response among the populace. That populace, by and large, lives a boring, peaceful life. They like the fact that there's now something to be fearful of. It's the same reason why people go on a roller coaster or watch a horror movie, and it's more tangible and real. It's real life. It's not a roller coaster ride that ultimately you know is on the tracks. Oh, maybe we'll go off the rails this time. Why do you think Fukushima, 9/11, Syria, all of these things provoke a visceral response in the population? What happens, though, is that eventually they come calling for the politicians and the corporations. They get so woke that they make the corporation go broke. It gets to the point where they virtue signaled and purity spiraled too much. So now the Atlanta mayor is calling for calm. They're going to crack down. The Seattle mayor has cracked down. And keep in mind, most of these individuals in the inner city are deeply left. Most of them are very far left. And they are often minorities. They're often non-white and or non-male. In some cases, they're not straight. People follow a non-Christian path or whatever. And these people have begun to crack down on the woke crowd because the woke crowd is starting to nibble at the hand that's feeding it. They're running out of food to give it, and then you know the puppy's still hungry, and now it's going for their fingers. It thinks that they're sausages. That's what's happening. You got sausage finger mayor over there getting the finger bit off, and they're going to respond. That's what Trump realizes. He doesn't need to mount a federal response. Let these people purity spiral to the point where they start attacking the Democratic-led political establishment in these cities, and they'll fuck themselves. Now you've got an 8-year-old dead. What are the optics of this? They can't possibly spin this in any way. Not like with the interstate on-ramp drive hit and run, where they simply pretend that the person wasn't black and therefore had a racial motive and obviously knew this was BLM and could have seen them at 1 a.m. when they're all wearing black clothing on the interstate ramp that doesn't have any lights. That's perfectly reasonable. By the way, that person, because of the fact that their vehicle was immediately attacked after this happened, probably will get off scot-free. Probably will escape the charges. I know that I would keep driving. Normally, you know, and God forbid this happens, but if I hit someone on the road, damn right I'm not going to do a hit and run. I'm going to stop and try to give aid because I don't want to go to federal prison for 10 years or something, because that would be asinine. But if it's 1,000 people there, and the second that I start to slow down, they start throwing rocks at my car, I don't really have the choice to stop. They're just going to lynch me at that point. They probably would have killed this dude. He'll probably get off scot-free or on some lesser cheat. He'll argue it down to you know, something like driving recklessly or something like that. It'd be the best thing for it, really, too, when you think about it. And more people are beginning to defend themselves. And these crowds are getting more violent. Look, they just killed a kid. Killing kids, it's really, really goddamn difficult, even with the entire propaganda apparatus of the legacy media behind you, because Orange Man bad, and we need to transform society, says Biden, all this other fucking newspeak bullshit. It's really hard to justify killing kids. It's one of the top-level sins that society generally agrees upon. Even unimpolite societies generally agree that children are off limits. Even barbarians have certain standards. These people apparently don't. Somebody randomly opened fire on the vehicle, killed an 8-year-old. And I guarantee it wasn't a white supremacist. Every time that they try to blame white supremacists planted in the crowd for violence, it turns out that it's someone who's not even white. That's every single time, including with the on-ramp, including, what was that one, I think his name was Lopez, he's Hispanic, he's obviously, you know, BLM actually, I believe. And he was guilty of violence there at Chaz, I think it was. Wasn't he the shooter? Every single time it happens, it seems to be a person, they're united by one of two things. They're motivated by racism, but they're BLM, or they're motivated by communism regardless, and they're Antifa. It's like 90% of the violent incidents that are happening. The rest of them are looting related. And random and indiscriminate. They're not motivated by hate, they're motivated by a desire to appropriate more goods for free because there's chaos going on and you know the police aren't going to do jack shit about it. What we should be doing is hauling these people in. Again, make entrapment statues. They use like bait cars in the inner city sometime to take care of hijackers, which is dubious, I would say. Why don't you have bait statues? You know how to use SMS and stuff like that. You know, the police can put out a bulletin. Oh, by the way, protests are planned for this statue later, so there's going to be a presence, and then people show up and they'll attack the fake statue that's like $10 worth of tin cans melted down or something. They attack the statue, and then the police fall in and arrest them all for attempted vandalism and all these other things. By the way, there should be no more latitude for them to let go of these people without charges. So often these people aren't being charged at all, and I'm wondering, are these judges maybe sympathetic to Antifa or something? I have a feeling that they are, because when you let people go that are destroying businesses in your own community, that are committing arson, that are committing assault, and other various crimes of various levels, to the point of felony charges under a proper understanding of the law, and they're getting let go of without charges, that's unacceptable. That's about all. Peace out.